My favorite dessert is tiramisu. Okay, sorry, that's not how you say it. Tiramisu, which is an Italian dessert consisting of layers of sponge cake, which is soaked in coffee with some chocolate and I guess some kind of cheese in it. All I know is that it tastes really good, and so I felt compelled in the middle of the night. I had this idea to like turn my favorite dessert into a character, and so this is me designing a character after tiramisu. I almost said it the wrong way again. So I actually put a lot of thought into this one, which usually my brain completely refuses to think while I draw, but this time I forced myself to really sit down and plan this. So first I gathered some inspirational images of tiramisu. Later in my sketch I'll explain how I took certain shapes and colors and combined them into the character, but most specifically I was in love with this white to brown gradient, like the smooth and creaminess of it. I was obsessed, and so honestly the final design is kind of based off of that gradient. I took some time to gather some pose references, which I typically am super lazy, but I'm glad I took the time to do that. Because tiramisu is very light and uplifting, I wanted a pose where the character was almost floating, kind of like a magical girl. The dress is probably the oh my gosh. The dress is probably the main aspect of her design, and while I'm like really impatient, I made myself take a couple minutes to kind of search for the type of dress that would remind me of tiramisu. From the very beginning, I knew I wanted something fluffy and layered, and so I really didn't look into any other kind of dresses. I was like, I know what I want and I'm going for it. Also, if we could just pretend like I didn't write desert, that would be really awesome. Anyway, so first I want to say that this video is sped up nearly 4 times, which is completely off topic, but I feel like a really big detriment to my personal art process has been seeing too many like speed paints and speed sketches, and my brain not really separating editing from what's real. A few days ago I actually saw a sketch process on Instagram, and you could see it was sped up, but you could see the clock, and I was looking at the clock and I was like, holy cow, like this sketch took this person 2 hours, but it was sped up to be like, 20 seconds or so. And it honestly just like clicked. Like after watching that, I was like, I finally like realized people do not sketch that fast. I knew no one was sketching as fast as the speed paint was edited to, but for some reason I still thought they were like speed sketching that shit, right? But honestly, I think a lot of people take their time when sketching. You really gotta get it right. So there's no need to rush it, especially when sketching is actually my favorite part of the process. But my brain was just like not putting 2 and 2 together. It was like, these videos go fast, you need to go faster. Yeah. But anyway, this whole process took me about 2 hours and 40 minutes from sketching to coloring and everything. And even then, the final result is not perfectly polished or anything. It's still kind of sketchy, but that's my art style. That's what I tell myself. Excuse me. So this whole process took me about 2 hours and 40 minutes, and the sketch itself took me about 50 minutes. So when designing this character, which I'm gonna call her Tiri, or I think I'm just gonna call her Terry, because Tiri, I don't know, Tiri's kind of cute. All right, we'll call her Tiri, short for tiramisu. Or misu. Ooh, misu, that's cute. Okay. Literally still designing the character as I record the video, apparently. So misu, I wanted her to be light and fluffy because that's what the dessert reminds me of, like the texture. And I wanted her to be very uplifting and magical because whenever I eat the dessert, it doesn't feel heavy to me. Like, certain ice creams or cakes will like weigh you down, but tiramisu is like very honestly, to me, it's uplifting. Like, a couple bites is all you really need because it's so impacted with taste. Like, they punch that taste in there, like, you know, it's like so I want it to be uplifting and magical, so that's why in the pose she's kind of floating, which I mentioned earlier, so I'm sorry for repeating. Another key aspect to her design is her short hair. I wanted it to resemble the shaved chocolate bits I saw on some of the tiramisu. So I gave her hair kind of like a lot of personality. Like, in the sketch, it has a lot more personality than how it ended up after being rendered. But I wanted like these very curved and like fluffed kind of hair shapes in a way. I also wanted her to have longer legs for more elegance, because tiramisu, I feel like, is not, from what I've had, is not like the cheapest dessert. It is more like fancy, I would say. I also really loved the shapes I was seeing in some of the pose references where the legs kind of created this empty space in between them, and I really liked that because it's really good for silhouetting. So a lot of advice that I've seen on character designing, people say that a good silhouette will show a lot of personality of your character, and a great one will be able to identify the character, which I feel like your character has to be a little more well known for someone to see the silhouette and be like, yeah, that's that character. Such as Pokemon, where they're all like, who's that Pokemon? And then it's like, you can tell by the silhouette because the design is very deliberate in that one, making it unique. One of my biggest struggles in this painting is actually something that never needed to happen in the first place, but I really wanted to try something out. So I started my sketch with a like really messy, rough, charcoaly brush, because I've seen some artists start their sketch like super rough with like the most crusty brush ever, and then they kind of like erase it and shape it and polish it and it looks amazing at the end. I don't know what the heck I did wrong, but my sketch was looking super crusty and low res for the longest time, and I had to clean that all up later, and I feel like it just messed up my process, and I'm so sorry for how crusty it looks. Maybe you can't tell because it's sped up, but when I was like zoomed in trying to do some details and I was seeing like the crustiness of like the sketch, I was just like, oh my god, this is something I will not be doing again. Like, the last thing I wanted was my tiramisu to look crusty, so yeah. I also struggled with making her body proportionate. Like, she actually ended up being like 8 to 9 heads tall, which is crazy, because I think typically females, and especially stylized like anime females, tend to be like 7.5 heads tall. Let me double check that. I don't want to be giving wrong information. So it says that humans tend to be 7 to 8 heads tall, but in anime world, you know, you can exaggerate that. So they can be shorter than 7 and taller than 7. So actually they could be 9 heads tall, but I didn't notice it at first, but when I really looked at it, I was like, especially with her really short dress, it just looked kind of abnormal to me with how long her legs were. It says like very average proportions for a female is like 7.5, like just a base average. So that's kind of what I wanted to go with this drawing. So I had to like cut down her legs and liquefy a little bit. I also should have looked up a reference for someone holding up their dress. I did not do that, and so her hand position changes quite a few times. Honestly, it looks a little bit broken a couple times, but I think I got it to an okay position at the end. I actually don't change the hand until the coloring process. Like, I change it a lot during the coloring process. If there's one thing I had to say was my favorite part about this drawing, it would probably be her legs and just like the shape of the calves. I have really struggled in the past with like drawing the anatomy of the leg, but looking up these references really helped, and I'm like really proud of myself for just making the legs look like legs instead of like cylinders. Another cute little detail I added was freckles on her shoulders and cheeks. And I feel like that really ties in the whole like chocolatey, sprinkly powder vibe. Really happy that I chose to do that like totally last minute. One thing I'm not very proud of is probably the dress itself, which is the main feature of the character design, but the folds were a little confusing for me, and I honestly didn't want to spend too much time on them. I was having a lot of fun like with her face and her hair, and the folds were kind of like an afterthought. I like the colors, but I left it very painterly and sketchy kind of on purpose. I think it gets the point across, and you know, it says what it needs to say, but I could have definitely done better. Let me know in the comments below what is your favorite part of this design. Also, let me know if you have any other ideas for objects, foods, places, animals, anything that like I could turn into a character, because I really loved doing this, like taking a prompt and designing a character after it, and I would love to like turn this into a series. My other favorite part is her hat. I added it totally last minute, and it's kind of like completely random, but I feel like it really pulls the vibe together, that it almost gives it a Christmassy vibe or like a fall vibe, and I love fall, so that is a huge like plus for me. So this is how Misu turned out. Overall, I'm fairly happy with the design. I'd say probably 8 out of 10 happiness. I don't typically draw full-bodied characters, but I had a lot of fun with this one, and I think I'm going to be doing a lot more full-bodied characters, because overall it's a really good learning exercise as well, like practicing not only like the face, but how it all connects together in a body. And that's about it. Thank you guys for watching.